Okay. It is a exciting day on the podcast because we have a lot of issues to discuss.
But that's not the most important thing for you.
We're going to go storm hunting right now.
I know. I'm the one that told you. You better lead this thing off with some sort of update on the weather.
Okay.
Because now we actually have this Arctic blast.
We do. It's going to get cold.
Hot.
Yeah.
No pun intended,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're going to tell us all about it, like what we can expect, right? Give us a little bit of lay of the land.
Yeah, so we'll go through the storm. We're going to go through a variety of things. We've talked about on this show the whole Greenland thing, and everybody's like, oh my God, Trump's going to send troops into Greenland. No, he's not. And they already have a deal to figure that out. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about what happened with Don Lemon again, right? And many of you have seen the Don Lemon stuff. We're going to make it quick. We're taking a little different angle here. Mm-hmm. What happened there was so egregious, it has to be dealt with. And we want to talk about how dangerous that can become. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, we have some other things here. We're going to talk about the economy and the coming war with China that's already here, as far as not necessarily a shooting war, but a war for AI and how we cannot afford to lose that. And some of that's coming out of Davos, too. A lot of interesting things out of Davos where all the elites are meeting, right? Mm-hmm. But then you're having the United States walk in and be like, yeah, guess what? If you're not prepared to carry your country forward and to do what is necessary to realize that you're in a competitive world, and I'm sorry, Europe, if you don't like that, it's too bad. We are in a competitive world, and it's time to step up. So we'll get into details on that, and then, of course, we're going to end the show with Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, he's quite the story. Did you look at how I dressed today and said I'm going to go in? I'm going to wear my green Henley just like her.
Yeah, I went to the 2-button green Henley. I know you're at the 5-button green Henley. It's a little bit of a difference here. Yeah, but I do appreciate your look.
Wow, we look like twins.
Yeah, we do.
We're not going to become the couple that we look alike.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't become that couple.
No, we don't look alike. Okay. We've never been accused of like, oh, these two look the same.
Like they've morphed together.
Yeah,
like
they
you know
look
how
together.
you look like your dog or you look like your spouse. Remember those little things?
Yeah, no.
We don't look like our dogs, and nor do we don't look like each other.
No,
right?
we do not.
Stop copying my fashion.
All right,
Mark.
I'll try not to.
Okay, listen.
All right. But you're looking good today.
Well, thank you, my dear. I'm glad you don't have a hoodie on. Let's just say that.
Okay.
It's a nice change. But anyway, okay, let's dive in.
Okay.
Weather.
Yeah.
Are we going to get snow? Is there going to be a snow day that is what the kids are going to ask you?
I think Albuquerque, unlikely.
Really?
Now, it's possible that it could stretch into Monday only because of timing. It's likely to stretch into to Sunday, but stretching into Monday, maybe the East Mountains have some trickiness that they have to contend with because of all the cold air. But I think overall what we're seeing here, and this has been an incredibly dry winter. This has been a terrible winter to this point. And to be honest with you, one of my biggest concerns is that we could well be looking at the possibility of a significant fire becoming a concern here because we're just going so long without any moisture. So I wanted to show you quickly here. This is the storm system right here. It's digging down and across New Mexico. You'll see it again here. I was just letting it run. But you can see right here, here it comes, a trough coming in from California and Mexico right in through New Mexico, the southern branch of the jet roaring through the state here. So for the first time in a long time, we have a storm. So that storm track, not too bad. It's not the strongest storm in the world, okay? This thing is not a blockbuster storm. However, what it has going for it is a ton of cold air coming down from Canada. And with a lot of cold air to work with, that's always tricky. And when you get one of those powerful cold fronts that comes through the east side of the state, and then you get the storm system that comes in from the west, that tends to cause problems. So that's 1-2 punch that in New Mexico is usually a prescription for a pretty good storm. So now the question is, when do we start to see the snow? Let's go ahead here and just take a look at some projected radar here. All right, so I wanted to give you an idea of when you could see some action here in New Mexico as far as getting the storm going. And this is Friday morning at 6 a.m. Okay, so what you can see here is some scattered rain showers across southern New Mexico and then some scattered snow showers in Union County. Okay, not horrible. So if you're getting out on Friday morning, I think you're going to be okay. But then we advance into the day on Friday here. And this is the next radar estimation here, basically. And this is roughly noon on Friday, okay? Notice Albuquerque. You get the Albuquerque snow hole or rain hole. See that right over Albuquerque? You're like, wait a minute, why aren't we getting any action? West Side's getting action. Up into the northeast, we're getting action. Clayton seeing some snow. Tucumcari snow develops. I-40 corridor, it develops. Cold air punches down into southeastern New Mexico, changing over rain to snow during the day on Friday here. But Albuquerque, some gusty east winds, I think, could create a little problem accumulating snow. So that's why I think through the day Friday, probably not a whole lot of snow. However, Friday night into Saturday, watch what we get here. And this is a projection of some of the models. Else, let's go into Albuquerque here, and you can see, filling in the snow. So that's a possibility for Albuquerque to get some snow late Friday night into Saturday. But again, we're talking Friday into Saturday, not Saturday into Sunday. So I think that's what's going to hurt your projection at getting
the snow day.
Getting a snow day. So I think that's not as likely. Now, the snow projections on this, snow is the single hardest thing to predict as far as how much you're going to get. And we can go through that some other time. But here's a couple of different model runs on what we think is going to happen. And to be honest with you, I'm going to show you something on this real briefly in just a second. But this is, I believe, this is the European model, in which there are two basic big model suites we look at. There's a bunch of models we look at, but two of the bigger ones are the European and the GFS, which is the American model. Okay, and they are a little bit different. So look right here. This is the European. You see those really bright pinks down in south central, southeastern New Mexico. Mm-hmm. That's Ruidoso. That is Cloudcroft. So that's the Sacramento Mountains. Chance to get a foot of snow there. Okay, but notice in the metro, couple inches. Okay. Could it be a little more? It could be. If the winds die down, you could get a little bit more snow. Els, let's go back to that for just 1 second. And if we go up to the northern mountains, Taos, Angel Fire areas, 6 to 12 inches of snow will be a possibility up there. Okay, according to this model.
Okay, according to that model. And you're saying 6 to 12 inches Saturday?
It would be Friday into Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah,
keep going.
Exactly. And then one more. This is, again, a different model. This is the GFS. This is the American model. Notice the color differences, though. See how much more snow you get on that I-40 corridor? So that's one area that I would really watch is Friday, especially midday Friday on into Saturday, watch I-40. That is really, it could be a dangerous situation.
For how long?
Well into through the day Friday. And then I think by Sunday, through the day Saturday. By Sunday, I think things will be calming down. But the cold air will be in place all day Sunday. So again, get where you need to go by Friday if you're going out on I-40. That's a concern. And then down into portions of the southeast. Let's put that back up for just one more second. And then it shows the northern mountains. Again, 6 to 12 inches of snow there. Albuquerque, you go in tight. You see that right there, a couple inches of snow. But see how that little area, it's just grays. Yeah. Those are the lighter snow amounts. Once again, the Albuquerque snow hole could well be in effect here. So we'll see. Again, though, would 2 to 4 inches shock me? It wouldn't. It wouldn't out of the storm. And just one other interesting little thing, because we're about to rip into the Europeans in a significant way, I do want to give them some credit on something. The weather modeling that they do is better than what the Americans do.
Interesting.
And look at the comparison right here. And this is from Ryan Maui. He is a meteorologist on Twitter. He's a very smart guy. Went to Florida State. And he put together a comparison. And the comparison is dead on. Just to show you, like, for example, the horizontal resolution, meaning the grid in which you get information. You have basically a 9-kilometer resolution with the European model. You have a 13-kilometer wider resolution with the American model, meaning the American model is not as precise, right? And you go all the way through the computing power, which we use to compute this, is better with the European model than the American model. We're getting better, but we're not there yet. The primary focus is a specialized mission, dedicated resources for the European model. There's more of a broader mission with the American model. It's not as accurate, not quite as good. Overall accuracy, the European model is more accurate. And by the way, you got to pay money in a lot of cases for the European model to get the data. American model is free. So that's cool. We do like that part of it. But anyway, just want to give the Europeans just a shade of credit before we light them up.
Okay, so again, a quick summary. If we're skiing this weekend, if people are out there going to planning to go skiing, I have some students that are really excited about skiing this weekend. Yeah. Do you think they've got a chance for some fresh snow up there?
No question. I think Saturday will be a very good day to ski.
Okay.
Now, it'll be cold. It'll be windy at times. It's going to be the coldest storm so far of the season. Across the east side of the state, it's going to be very, very cold. So once the snow falls, it's not going to melt off until we get into early next week. So just realize that.
Okay. Now, talking to our other daughter, who's out in Virginia, do you anticipate them getting dumped on over there with snow as well, or just cold temperatures?
No. They're going to get hit very hard. 12 to 18 inches of snow for Virginia.
Holy cow.
Yeah, another storm. Yeah, it's going to be.
Did you tell our kid that?
I did. Okay. She's been properly briefed.
Okay, good. Okay, well, all right, yes. Well, so weatherman Mark still hasn't gone very far, so, still there. We still need to get you a green screen. And
I know. Well, and
we'll
again,
work on that.
I will say that I did not put as much time into this little forecast as I usually do. But
I know, because I made you do this in the last minute. I think we should talk about the storm. But
yeah, it's going to be interesting. Okay.
Let's move on.
Yeah, so let's get into this. No, I want to touch on this Don Lemon thing before we get to the Greenland stuff. And the reason why we want to touch on it is because I think there was a line crossed in what they did. To go into a church and do what was done to parishioners who were just trying to worship Christ. And they felt the need to get in there to scream at him. For those of you who don't know, Don Lemon was embedded basically with a group of protesters in Minneapolis who went into a Baptist church and interrupted things and started screaming at everybody for no reason at all whatsoever. Okay? And so I want to play just a little bit of this.
It was obviously planned because Don Lemon is a independent journalist now. He used to work for CNN.
Yeah.
And I think he was let go from CNN, if I recall. I believe, yes. Okay, and so then he obviously this was all planned. People knew about it.
Don does not live in Minnesota, but he was there.
He was there.
Yeah.
And so they all go in with their cameras and their phones and they're yelling at these guys and there's small kids and they're upset and it was bizarre.
It was completely
watch.
and totally over the line.
And plus, keep in mind, too, that these people, think about the things that have been going on. In Minneapolis, there was a shooting, a school shooting there not very long ago. Now, given I know that that's different, but still, in this heated environment where people are so...
At a Catholic school.
Right, at a Catholic school.
Okay. Yeah.
So tensions
are... So going into places of faith... and screaming at people, not the best move.
No, and I'm just telling you that tensions are so up in the air. Like, as a parishioner there, I'm sure they're sitting there going, what do these people want to do? What are they going to do? And what's going to happen? And things keep escalating. So for this reporter to sit here, Don Lemon, and think, we're fully justified to be here. I don't know why you would consider this any sort of like terror, or
violation of trust or norms or the law. It is absolutely a violation of the law.
It's a private property, by the way. So Mark, you had a good point saying you're not allowed to come into my living room and do your protest. Okay, that's not what the right of protest is.
Well, your free speech rights stop at my front door, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
Okay. So in what's breathtaking about this, first of all, I want to listen to Don Lemon really quickly here, accosting the pastor, David Easterwood. Okay, so first and foremost, just what he says here real quick, and then we'll get into how ridiculously uninformed and, dare I say, stupid Don Lemon is as to the law. And so just quickly listen to this.
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
This is the pastor, by the way.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here.
Yeah, he's trying to get some space from you, you over-officious jerk.
Yeah,
so
he's right in his grill.
Well, it's ridiculous. And so his comment of you have a right to protest, you're just an ignorant fool.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to go in to private property and do that. And also, on top of that, you don't get to go into somewhere and try to stop the free expression of their religion and their beliefs. It's completely and totally against the law. And so we'll get to that from a lawyer in a second because we're not lawyers. Okay. But after this finished, Don Lemon had the gall to go on with Jennifer Welch, who is one of the most hideous podcasters on the planet. And so their ability to take this and turn it into, this is evil Christians. And that's what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, and they went in and they're targeting a religion, targeting Christians on this. And it's absolutely horrendous. So there are a couple of different sound bites from these two talking after this was all said and done. And I don't understand what Don Lemon is doing. Clearly, he wants this attention, but we'll get to a couple of his sound bites.
He's hungry for attention.
There's no doubt. Yeah. I just think he's chosen the wrong thing.
Right.
So we'll see how this goes. But just listen to what Jennifer Welch says about, again, she doesn't know the people in this room at all. She doesn't know this church. She has no familiarity with them, but she has no problem judging them.
Well, I can certainly understand their frustration with that because all of the grifting through Christianity and overt patriotism, and then these people can't call out the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia ring. It's very alarming.
Okay, so this woman goes and blames people. She says, I can understand their frustration, meaning the protesters.
The protesters, not the parishioners.
No, she doesn't care about them. And then the grifting in Christianity, which she's not a Christian and has no idea. And there's been more good done by Christians in this country than any country in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. So again, you're talking about somebody who is from a perspective that not only ignorance, but I think evil in this particular case. And so, and then her comments that, applying that these people in this church should somehow do something about Jeffrey Epstein, who by the way, I didn't hear you Jennifer Welch say a word about Jeffrey Epstein in the 4 years that Joe Biden was president. Didn't hear a word. Right. Suddenly Jeffrey Epstein is now whatever. It doesn't matter. These people are literally showing up their children to worship God, and you're blaming Christianity as a grift and calling it a grift, and then going to them and saying effectively that you should care more about the Jeffrey Epstein issue. What a clueless fool.
Well, it's just a straw man's argument too, just to try to let me push the energy towards a different issue. Right. Because at the end of the day, I don't know how anybody justifies this behavior. I don't know how anybody sits back and says, hey, this is okay. I don't care what faith you're attending.
If you
what
went into a mosque
in,
and did this, give me a break. No.
You don't have the right to go in your assembly of protesting into a house of worship, no matter what it is.
Right.
Or a private business.
Right.
Or somebody's home. Like, there are laws that are also protected as well. The fact that this Don Lemon is a clown when it comes to this is
but don't worry. Don't worry. It gets worse.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Okay, so now they start talking about...
he becomes a victim somehow.
Oh, no, there's no question.
Okay,
there's no
good.
question.
I was waiting for that.
Don's the real victim here.
Right, I just want to make sure we're aware of that.
Yes, and by the way, of course, everybody in that room, again, who Don Lemon has never met, doesn't know them, they're all racist. So let's get that going.
Mm-hmm. And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there. And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America.
Okay, that wasn't why. And by the way, give me a freaking break. You're the one that went in there with the camera. By the way, he had all his gear on. I don't know if you noticed this, but he has like a brand. He's branded hat on. Like, he was doing this all for exposure, and then comes back as this victim. This is appalling on so many levels. Because you have parishioners that are there to worship Jesus on a Sunday morning, and whether or not, whatever their thoughts are about ICE, right? You don't even happen to know that. Right? You have no idea
what
their opinions are. They could be anti-ICE themselves, or they could be like in favor of them coming in and taking away the swindlers of the folks that have been ripping off people in the state of Minnesota. Who knows? Maybe they actually want the bad guys out. I mean, here's the thought: like, maybe get the people that are violent offenders that shouldn't be here and are here illegally and causing chaos. Maybe the people in that church have every right to their opinion as well. I've talked to my friends who live in Minnesota. This is just disturbing on so many levels, because it's just, it's just this continuing divide. And where's the boundary? There's no boundary.
Well, I think
now we can walk into a church on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And it is my right to make you listen to what I have to say about this issue.
It's my right to stop your free exercise of your religion.
Right. And by the way, you're at church to worship. You're not there to get any other thing out of it other than to worship to God. That's the point of going to church on Sunday. It's not about you and whatever else you've got cooking, right? So for them to go in there and be like, how dare you come into this place, instead of standing up for, what's her name? The woman that got killed?
Renee Good.
Yeah, Renee Good. That's the most ridiculous argument I've ever seen in my life. And it's so offensive. I just hope these guys, something happens to this group, because if they start thinking they've got this flex and they can do this at any church or any business, it's completely out of touch.
I think it is the perfect point, which is a line has been crossed to the point where I will tell you, there are some churches, if you did this, you wouldn't walk out of there. You wouldn't walk out of there, and for good reason. And they had every right to do it. Because you're not going to walk in there and start screaming at everybody and intimidating everybody. He mentions intimidation. Yeah. It's exactly what he did.
That's what you did.
This is a classic example of he's accusing them of doing what he is doing to them. And it is beyond arrogant. And this guy is so clueless. Don, you're the biggest name. Don, you're the biggest name who's dumb enough to go violate the law, go in and intimidate people, and think you're on the right side of this thing. You're so ignorant, and you're so ridiculously stupid. If you go and listen to what he said, and by the way, in this conversation he has with her, he then goes in and starts attacking Nicki Minaj and telling Nicki Minaj to sit down. a black woman who firmly believes in Jesus and has stood up for belief in Jesus, he's telling her to sit down. Please, okay, give me a break. And so this guy is absolutely horrendous. I mean, it shows you how arrogant he is. And at this point, you see this, they've gone way too far. And again, they were making progress on the ICE thing because people were looking at ICE going, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. Americans don't love seeing those images on their TV, right? You see the ICE images. A lot of Americans are like, I don't know. Then they do this, and it's way over the line. But Stacey Snider, who was on CNN, talked about the legal aspects of this. And do they have a legal problem? Okay. And I will tell you, from a state perspective, very simply, Tim Walz should have already arrested him. Because this is very simply a clear violation of state law. It's a clear violation of state law. But let's set him aside because he's such a coward and is absolutely somebody who is fanning the flames here along with Jacob Frey. They are doing everything they can to fan the flames of this sort of thing. They are going to lead to more people dying because they won't step up and be real leaders. And Don Lemon is going to be carrying the flag and be shocked when someone gets hurt again because of stuff that he did to help make it worse. But here's what Stacey Snider said about this incident and what it means in reference to federal law, not state law.
Stacey Snider joins the table. And Stacey, let me start with you, counselor. What does the law say about protesting in a church like this?
Yeah, the law says that these protesters are in trouble. There's a federal statute called FACE, F-A-C-E, that says if you interfere or physically obstruct another person's First Amendment right to exercise their freedom of practicing their religion, it is a federal crime. Now, had these protesters stood outside the church, been on the sidewalk, been on the street, they likely would have been protected by their First Amendment right to protest. But you're allowed to protest in a public forum, but that right is not absolute. They crossed the line when they went inside a church. And I think of it almost like, a church is public property. Imagine if protesters went inside a hospital to protest Medicaid or health policy and interrupted treatment of patients. It's really not that different.
But ICE officers.
Okay. And by the way, not all churches are public property at all, actually. Many of them are private property. So, in fact, most, I would argue, are private property. But
and also notice that Tim Walz, our buddy Tim up there, crickets. Okay, the guy that has to get out there and say it's your right to protest, it's your thing. What about these people? Aren't these his constituents as well?
Of course they are.
But he says nothing about this on this day. Nothing.
Absolutely. So the issue then becomes how much of this flows into politics. So we have representatives in one. We have a congressional representative who was on with Jim Sciutto on CNN, and she was asked. Sciutto asked her. He said, "Hey, look, what do you think of these people going into a church?" Because now we got leaders involved now and say, what are the leaders going to do? What are they going to say? Are they going to say that's off limits? That's the wrong thing to do. You have your rights, but they don't include doing this. Of course, any normal human being who's not a total crazy bird would say, don't do this. Well, let's see what happens here.
Do you believe it was a step too far for protesters to go into a church?
I don't. I think that when they find out that someone that's supposed to be speaking for the community in church is found out to be an ICE, like a federal agent that is running ICE in their communities, they have the right to go in there. Churches have always been an open door. And from my understanding of the videos that I saw, those protesters were not violent in any way.
This is what I mean by when we don't elect our best. I mean, she just really is. It's ludicrous. Churches are an open door. You just go in there and yell whenever you want. No, you can't.
No, you can't. When was the last time you stepped foot in a church, lady? I mean, that would be my question.
Believe me. Yeah,
because
right.
honestly,
Agreed. But I will say this is such an important line that needs to be drawn here, and there do need to be arrests, and there do need to be steps of accountability here, because if this is allowed to stand, this will only get worse. And I will tell you, there are plenty of congregations in this country that will rightfully not allow that to happen. And so when they don't allow it to happen, it will get physical. And I think it will get physical in a dangerous way. It needs to be stopped. So clearly, Tim Walz and Jacob Frey don't care enough to be a leader to stop people in their community from getting hurt. So the feds need to step in and make sure that they do. But more politically, if you look at the numbers right now on where Democrats are, they're not very good. And I think issues like this are going to continue to erode that faith. and Harry Enton went through and had some numbers on this, and the party itself is struggling because it's one thing to say, look, we've got to handle ICE better and things of that nature. It's another to say, get rid of ICE, and it's another to say, we're going into your church. And this starts to hurt their numbers.
How are voters feeling about Democrats right now?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats in the minds of the American public are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress, you said it, Kate Baldwin, the lowest ever. Look at this. Overall, they are 55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century. They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
Because when you sit there and jump on issues that are absolutely toxic to your brand and toxic to leadership, this is what you get. Mm-hmm. They have a chance to pivot this. They have a chance to have better leaders that do smarter things. We point out when we see leaders in the Democratic Party doing things that we like, we point them out because I'm not here to tell you all the good ideas come from one side or everybody, Republicans can do no wrong. That's not true. There are plenty of Republicans who do wrong all the time.
Right.
And we point it out. But in this particular case, going and doing this and going after law enforcement constantly and supporting groups that support chaos, it is absolutely a nightmare. And so we'll see how this all shakes out. I just thought that Don Lemon thing was so bad. It's so bad. Egregious.
Well, it's so offensive. I think that's the biggest thing is that it felt really offensive to me that you think that you have the right to go in there. I don't understand the way of thinking. I don't understand the borrowed trauma that you're still continuing to see on social media up there of people saying, I have to make food for my neighbors because they're scared to go out in the streets. Give me a break. Are they? Why? Why are you scared to go out in the street? It's not like ICE is coming in. And I just think this has gotten out of control. And leaders there could actually temper the flames, and they can't. They're not doing it. And I hope that nobody gets hurt in one of these situations. Because if you think that this is the end of that, it's not.
No, and our leaders now, instead of leading by trying to calm people down, they are flamethrowers.
Oh, because it's all about party. It's all about party. And let's divide. Let's make this all to be Trump's fault, no matter what the situation is. Let's not talk about the criminals that we're out here to arrest. God forbid we talk about that. I feel bad for the people that are in that church, and hopefully it does. It strikes at the core because I think our faith is so important to us. Then when we see someone attacking people that are exercising that faith, it makes you beyond angry. Well, it feels like to me that either they've never sat in church themselves, because if you go to church, if you're a regular church attendee, or even if you go occasionally, I would say 90% of people that attend church have either communion with God during that time. They're either praying, sometimes you're crying, sometimes you're just worshiping and singing, and the music was going when they walked in. It's a very private moment between you as a believer and Jesus or God. I believe that 100%. It's not, you don't go to church for show. You're not supposed to be there to get something out of it. It's your turn to go in there and to worship God. That's the whole point of going to church. So to have somebody break that community is so out of line. It shows me that the people that are protesting either have never been in a church or haven't been in a church in a very long time.
And there were people that, there was a guy in there who was trying to lecture some of the people in church about what Jesus would do. And it's like, there's no one further from understanding what Jesus would do or who Jesus is than these people. I'm sorry. It's just true. So, and believe me, I just find that the whole thing to be reprehensible. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Okay, let's switch gears.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Greenland, because it's obviously been a hot topic, right? It's continuing. It's
coming down out of Davos, baby.
It's coming down. And as we kind of talked about, while Trump kind of is blustery at times, saying that he kind of alluded. When people are like, "Are you gonna take military measures to take over Greenland?" and he's like, "I'm gonna do whatever it takes." Those kind of comments. Turns out that's not actually his plan anymore.
So, right. And we talked about this on the last show that Trump was negotiating. Everybody knows we're not going to line up and take Greenland because they don't need to. Okay. That's the number one reason. You don't need to. So it's okay to let logic step in once in a while. So now Trump, who drives everybody crazy in Davos, believe me, these people in Davos, they're the elite of the elite. And plenty of them don't like Trump. But there's also some really interesting things coming out of Davos. So this is the first thing we're doing. There's a couple other things here that I think you're really going to want to know that are interesting. But here's what...
And Davos is the World Economic Forum.
Yes, yes.
Happening in Switzerland for those folks that don't know what that is. So when we're saying Davos, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Very good point. And so here's what Trump said about Greenland on Wednesday.
It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. They've acquired. There's nothing wrong with it. People thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. All we want from Denmark for national and international security and to keep our very energetic and dangerous potential enemies at bay is this land on which we're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built.
Okay, that's missile defense.
Mm-hmm.
And don't kid yourself, it's critical. Everybody laughed at Ronald Reagan about it when we talked about it, and they called it Star Wars and everything else. It's here. So missile defense is critical, because if you get rogue actors or even full-on nation states that want to fire a nuclear weapon at the United States, we need the ability to be able to shoot those weapons down. And all the Greenland, is that what we're calling it? Greenland dust-up came to an end here late in the day on Wednesday.
Yeah, Trump announces framework for a future deal of Greenland. This is coming in from the New York Post. President Trump announced he has a framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and will not impose tariffs on Europe like he threatened to do. President Trump announced he has a framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and will not impose... Oh, sorry, I already said that one. Sorry, it's in there twice. We have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and, in fact, the entire Arctic region, he wrote on Truth Social. This solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the United States of America and all NATO nations. Based upon this understanding, I will not be imposing the tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st, he added.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, crisis averted. Who knew, right? But again, one thing to remember here, too, is that obviously our role in NATO and a bunch of our NATO partners were like, well, we're not going to stand for this and everything else. You know, Germany sending 12 soldiers to Greenland to go help with that, you know, whatever. But Mark Rutte, who runs NATO, who's in charge of NATO, has done a pretty good job of being a balancing point to be able to say, look, let's work this out. He gets along well with Trump. He's obviously runs NATO, and he made some really good points about how there is the perfect intersection of interest between the United States and our NATO partners all having a role in Greenland, but the United States having a much bigger role very shortly.
So statements from me will not add anything here. And when it comes to the Arctic, I think President Trump is right. Other leaders in NATO are right. We need to defend the Arctic. We know that these sea lanes are opening up. We know that China and Russia are increasingly active in the Arctic. There are 8 countries bordering on the Arctic. 7 are a member of NATO. That's Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, Iceland, Canada and the US. And there's only 1 country bordering on the Arctic outside NATO, and that's Russia. And I would argue there is a 9th country, which is China, which is increasingly active in the Arctic region. So President Trump and other leaders are right. We have to do more there. We have to protect the Arctic against Russian and Chinese influence. And that's exactly what NATO ambassadors decided to do in September. We are working on that, making sure that collectively we will defend the Arctic region.
Okay, very smart. Stop with all the rhetoric, and I get that Trump can definitely lead to those issues.
He
right?
does. He can throw gasoline on stuff with his little memes and his little, territory of the U.S. flag, whatever thing, AI thing he put out earlier today. That kind of stuff stokes the fire, and that's where I'm always like, please. I get that he control, but sometimes I'm like, just calm down.
Yeah, no, I agree. But when you see the head of NATO kind of say, look, come on, let's, and so, but I will say, I want to take a deep dive on something here that is interesting to me endlessly. Because as I was watching different stuff, I want to go through, because Trump is the guy who shows up at the party and starts telling everybody what he really thinks of them. right? And you have all these elite snobs, right? All these snobs who think, oh, we're from Europe, and Europe has this outsized image of itself, which no longer exists. And it no longer exists because Europe gave it up. Europe gave up the power that they once had. Okay? So right now, the United States is basically Europe's security guarantor, right? Europe couldn't defend itself without the United States. They gave that up. And when Trump came into office, he said, you got to spend more money on defense. You've got to spend more money on your own defense. What were they doing? They were allowing us to spend all of our money on defense, right? And we would spend our money on their defense. And Americans are like, wait a minute, we have a role, there's no doubt, and we will take that role. And we don't want complete separation from Europe. They're great allies in many cases. But it's not our job to spend every American dime on this, why they don't spend any money, right? It went too far. And American generosity has gone too far in so many different ways. And so many Americans are sick of it now, whether it's the defense of Europe, whether it's taking our social programs and people getting ripped off. And you have Americans who can't get to the end of the month. And they wonder why all the tax dollars they pay aren't enough. Well, they aren't enough because we're getting ripped off in various areas. It doesn't mean that allies aren't important. They are. NATO is important. It is. We need all these things, okay? But at the same time, the European arrogance that they're smarter than everybody else when they've handed over their countries, not only because we cover their defense, but because you have massive issues where Russia's supplying all their energy. They don't have energy they provide anymore.
No, because they went totally green, right?
Go green.
They do the green thing.
Europe, especially the UK, goes out. They go to these green energy things, which have killed the country. You got Germany who did the same thing. It's craziness. And as far as a total tactic of doing what's best for your country, giving up energy is idiotic.
And let's not even begin to talk about the immigration issues.
Immigration issues, right? They're all right.
All boundaries are off. Come on in.
That's
Everybody
right.
Come
That's
on
right.
in.
So Europe is weaker than they've ever been. Okay? And so they have this thing they like to do, which is lecture Americans. And America's looking at it, and Trump especially is looking at it and being like, no. Okay, so I want you to listen to Trump. Give the Europeans, he just does a little flyby here, and listen to Donald Trump on this.
And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps.
Okay, Trump. So Trump's like, listen, come on. And you say to yourself, well, why would Trump do that? Okay. And so I bring you the Belgian Prime Minister, Bart de Wever. Okay. The Belgian Prime Minister. Okay. Now
they make chocolate, I think.
Yeah. Not that I don't have respect for Belgians. Their waffles are great. Hello. I'm not into carbs right now, but
I know Mark's going keto, everybody.
Oh my
if you got keto recipes, send them in because holy cow, it's not the easiest thing to eat.
I haven't touched
this guy's stomach. Anyway.
I haven't touched a carb in weeks. All right. So I want you to just listen to the Belgian Prime Minister, and this is why people like Trump look at him and are just irritated.
People want to join the European Union. Yes. Nobody wants to join China. Nobody, no neighbor of the United States says, well, we want to join the United States. Nobody wants to. They want to join the European Union just because we have respect. We have the rule of law. We do speak softly.
Oh, they speak softly.
An important debate because.
What are you, a librarian?
They speak softly.
Who is this guy? I mean, first of all, and
Mark,
okay,
we speak softly.
I know everybody wants to be part of the European Union because we speak softly. Okay, guy, like, what are you talking about? Welcome to the real world, where you speak softly, you get just kicked out. And look, the world is the most vicious playground you've ever been in. If you're not prepared to defend your territory, it will be taken from you.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the way it is. And so, look, the United States has a role to team with Europe. There's no question. But these guys are so arrogant and so smug that when Trump shows up there, I don't blame him for being irritated by it. So it made me think of something when I was watching this. And it made me think, this is what Trump must be thinking when he talks about some of these smug leaders in Europe who act like they're so much smarter and they've got everything figured out. And so many of you know, my favorite movie of all time, which we've talked about, is A Few Good Men. And I want to take you back to the courtroom scene with Colonel Nathan Jessup as he is being questioned by Tom Cruise's character, Daniel Kaffee. And Tom Cruise asks him, Well, he wants the truth. And so Colonel Jessup gives him a little piece of truth. So I could just imagine Trump giving the Europeans this little piece of truth.
I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide, and then questions the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a weapon and stand a post. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
So, Europe, that's what Donald Trump would say to you, and many Americans now would say, that you guys, you literally sleep under the blanket of freedom in which we provide. And by the way, you're not that free. So many of you in Europe who go and put something online get a visit from the cops. Well, you don't get that in America. Yeah. And so give me a break, right? But one of the great lines of all time, and it's so true, it's that the United States, and again, I'm not saying Europe doesn't have a role with the United States. We do need these partnerships. There's no doubt. But for a long, long time, we sunk billions, even trillions of dollars into these partnerships with nothing in return other than a snide remark here and there from European leaders. And it is important that we rebalance that a little bit. And Trump is doing some of that. Some of it is uncomfortable. There's no doubt. I wouldn't handle it the exact same way Trump does. I understand that point, but the overall point remains. Americans have supplied so much to so many for so long that there needs to be a rebalancing so that many people in the American dream can achieve that dream again. And part of that is making sure we rebalance our, especially relationships with the countries in Europe.
Well, speaking of rebalancing, this Ken Griffin also spoke today at Davos, and he talked about just the restructuring, how things have changed on the business front.
Yeah, so Davos, what's interesting is there are all these breakout groups where they have all these different speeches.
Panels,
Yeah, and Ken Griffin, one of the most accomplished business leaders in the United States. Okay, he runs Citadel. He is beyond, he's a billionaire of billionaires, but he's a super smart business person. And that's some of what you're talking about that he stepped in today. And he talked about the differences and why there's a lot of good stuff going on in the U.S. economy that's underneath the surface. And he talked about that.
You cannot imagine how painful it was each and every day under the Biden administration to look at what new crazy proposal was being put into place to solve a problem that didn't even exist. I mean, our constant friction at Citadel with the government across umpteen different aspects of our business was exhausting. And to have that literally end on one day, Election Day, just gives you so much energy as an entrepreneur to go back and build your damn business. So the biggest sea change I've seen across American executives has been just like the giant sigh of relief. I can now go and focus on building my business. And that prior administration, we happen to be a creditor of Spirit. Their merger with JetBlue was stopped. Spirit's in bankruptcy today. There were so many decisions that were so poorly thought out in terms of economic consequences. It cost the U.S. economy dearly. I cannot emphasize that enough. And so the Trump administration is making slow progress on deregulation thus far, but the end of the regulatory onslaught has been just an extraordinary boom for American business.
Okay, so that's interesting because it's something, if you're a business owner, some of it you see, some of it you don't. It takes a while for all that to work its way through the system. So I don't know where the economy is going to go for 26, especially late in 26 for the election. We've talked about that's a huge deal a million times. But Ken Griffin bringing up an interesting point, which is that the regulatory portion of this, bureaucrats stepping in and stopping businesses from trying to expand or do what's right, is infuriating. And it is so difficult to deal with because there's no recourse. When you have an administration who's like, no, I'm going to stop this. No, and you can't do anything. And you see these guys, and it doesn't matter what political party they're from, they get frustrated. They get angry. They're like, wait a minute, you don't understand. We can save Spirit Airlines. We stop them from going into bankruptcy. Help us with this. And they say no, they stop it. And so Spirit now in bankruptcy, right? So that's just one little example, but there are a million of them. And I guarantee a million of you listening to this can understand and had those times when you get a government bureaucrat that jumps in. And again, that's not that government doesn't ever have a role, but government's role should be to help facilitate what's better for the people of their country. I mean, instead of getting in the way of it, and when they do, it's a huge issue.
Well, and let's talk a little bit more because Joel Kaplan was there also at Davos talking about, and he's from Meta, by the way. He's talking about how, hey, we better wake up because this war, so to speak, with China on AI is coming for us. And so it's like we need to wake up really quickly and be paying attention. So take a listen to what he had to say.
We're an American company that serves the world, and we're an American company that's investing massively in AI and AI infrastructure. And we're aligned with the administration in the U.S. that it's very important that we win this battle against China. It's the most critical battle that we'll have over the coming years for both our national and economic security. But that's a battle that not only the U.S. but all of the Western democracies have a stake in. So we think it's really important that we progress on this together with our friends and allies around the world. Because this race is too important not to win.
Okay, it's too important not to win, is what he said there at the end. It's exactly right. This is why we keep tying energy into AI, because you cannot get to where you want to go with AI without an unbelievable amount of energy. It's just a fact. And if you're taking energy to develop AI and for data centers, you've got to still have energy that keeps prices low for working Americans. It has to happen, and we cannot lose this. So what does it mean? It means you need endless amounts of energy. That's why we keep talking about energy. So that's critically important. And then on the other side, chips. Chips are incredibly important as well. And Scott Besson talked about the importance of making sure that we diversify how we get our chips as well. Because everybody talks about Taiwan. Taiwan's a huge deal, because if the Chinese went in there and took Taiwan, they would take a massive amount, I think over 80% of the chips that are produced for what we use across the board
for lots of things. Yeah.
And so remember
cars, electronics, all kinds of. This was the big deal right before COVID hit. Do you remember this?
Well, no, it was after COVID hit, right? So after COVID, we realized.
I remember Trump was talking about this a little bit before, just the whole Taiwan part,
right?
Before COVID, and then it really came in, and I understood it a lot more after COVID and all the shortages that were happening.
Remember what we talked about during COVID, which was, oh my gosh, every one of our medications made in China. We don't make them here. We're too dependent on China. Again, this gets back to the Europe thing. Europe's got to readjust, and so do we. We got too much stuff from China. And so we're seeing all that develop, and that's what Scott Besson talks about here with Taiwan.
That the single biggest threat to the world economy, the single biggest point of single failure is that 97% of the high-end chips are made in Taiwan. If that island were blockaded, that capacity were destroyed, it would be an economic apocalypse. So we are
restructuring what we're doing. Okay, and we've got to onshore more of these chips, or both, probably onshore and then bring them through countries that we know we could always get them through. So just incredibly important. And that's why I'm always tying this into the environmental movement, because right now in the state of New Mexico, they're getting ready to introduce a bill in the legislative session, which started yesterday, that will cripple energy production in the state of New Mexico. It's called the Clear Horizons Bill. And what it will do is basically put caps on the amount of CO2 that can be produced in the state. And given that we are the number 2 oil and gas producer in the country, it will take that production and hurt it. If you, again, remember, 50% of our budget comes from oil and gas revenue. So if you take that out, all of a sudden the benefits that we pay for education with and we pay for Medicare and Medicaid with, that would be devastated. Okay, you cannot do this. And again, on top of the fact that we are in an AI race, we need endless amounts of energy. We need nuclear power now. We can't afford to take a single energy source offline. Like, it's not a mature or realistic argument to say, well, let's get rid of oil and gas and let's do renewables. Like, it's not even... It's ludicrous. You can't even say it.
It's uneducated.
It's really ignorance, and it will lead to the downfall of the country if you do it. China's not going to do that. They understand how much energy they need, okay? And we've done a smart thing in having a bigger role in what Venezuela ships out to China as far as oil goes. Energy is power. It's all there is to it. And I don't mean power as far as powering a plug. I mean power as far as being able to handle what happens in the world. So this is a huge deal. So this Clear Horizons bill will be devastating. So if you can write your legislator, I would do it. I would write your legislator and say, listen, do not support Clear Horizons. It will hurt this state immeasurably. Okay, but not only that.
So naming it a fancy name Don't be fooled.
Oh, I know. Exactly. No. There's no
clear
question.
horizons. There's no clear horizon.
No, nobody does oil and gas better than we do it in this state. We've got to continue to supply that. There's just not even a mature or realistic argument where you can't do that. Okay, so anybody who tells you, oh no, we can do all renewables, they're ignorant to the point of needing an education on our energy needs with AI and everything else in the race with China. All right, all this folds together. And then also at this same time, the number of people who truly believe we're in a climate crisis is cratering. Why people like Bill Gates, we talked about this before on the show, have said this is not going to end the planet. Stop acting like it is and stop taking that approach. And the numbers are staggering.
Talk about top issue facing the U.S., climate change. Well, I got some numbers for you on the screen right here. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that these numbers are not particularly high. Top issue facing the United States, climate change. It was 3% in 2021, 2% on average of polls in 2023. And this year, the average of polls, 2. It is very, very low on the list of priorities. I was trying to count it out in the Gallup poll, and basically it was so low down, I was counting all the different issues, almost lost track. It was like 15th or 20th. It was just very, very low down. So the bottom line is not only are we seeing that the number has not really moved over the last 36 years, but in terms of being the top issue, it simply put has not broken through. 2%, there are just a ton of things that rank way higher on the list of importance.
Even I can count to 2. In terms of how people feel it will impact them directly, what are you saying?
Yeah, I'll just note 2 things. Number 1, your Harvard education paying off. But number 2 right here, look at this. Climate change effect on my home area will be harder to stay here. Look, in 2023, it was 23%. Look at where we are now, 17%. Now, these numbers are pretty comparable, but they're pretty comparable on the low side is what we're talking about here, is Americans simply put just don't think it will have the type of impact that will really change their lives, which again goes back to the message that Bill Gates was saying, right? This is not something that's going to be devastating for humanity. It's something we can work our way out of. A lot of Americans agree. And even on this, we're talking about just 27% of Democrats who believe that climate change effect in my home area will be harder to stay here. So even on the left wing, where you'd expect the climate change message to hit most home, it simply put is not
doing it. But here's the thing. That's why you cannot pass laws that will cripple the state like Clear Horizons.
Should we send this clip of this over to to Mimi Stewart? Do you think we should give it to her?
I'm telling you, I cannot believe we're even discussing it. And this would be beyond stupidity. And the governor went and talked about it in her State of the State, saying she supported this. I actually don't believe she truly does, but who knows? She went out and said it. It's ludicrous. It really is. This is another example of political messaging being more important than what's good for the people of the state. There is no measure in which this would ever help anybody in the state of New Mexico. It will be crippling, and it is absolutely dangerous and can't be done.
Wow. Okay, well, let's end on a happier note, right? We have the Hoosiers win, the big win, right? Yeah. And I knew this much about this team going in, which is not saying much, but very little. But you have talked about Mendoza. We've played clips on because he is so endearing.
Yes, he is.
And he's, they were these massive underdogs for a long time, and then they went 16-0, right?
Yeah, they were a program that was before Curt Cignetti got there 2 years ago. They were a bottom of the bottom program. He came from James Madison, small school, turned the thing around in 2 years.
It's impressive.
They go undefeated, unbelievable. Fernando Mendoza is going to likely be the number 1 pick in the draft.
Wow, next year you think?
Does he go? It's in April.
Okay, was he a senior? Sorry, I should know this. Okay, so he was done, right?
He's done. Yep.
Okay, and he had a sweet family watching the game. If you guys got to see it, it was very sweet.
Yeah, his mom has MS. She supported him. His dad's been great. They're just a great family, and he's someone of deep faith. You can tell.
Right. So should we play this little clip?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's play a little. Let's end on this little. Yeah,
talking
note.
about his faith and what his faith means to him.
I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic man, and they've done so much to help me, whether it's confession or just be able to talk or just mass every Sunday. So I really give a lot that I have accomplished this season in my life to the Lord. I really give thanks to God. And for example, for the Heisman, the first thing I said in the Heisman speech was give all the glory to God. Thank you so much to God. And so I think it was really important to take it over those guys, especially those guys who've been great religious mentors to myself.
Okay, we're going to go right here.
Very cool.
And the coach too, also Christian, right?
Yeah.
If I heard that right.
Yeah.
Okay, so does he stay? I feel like whenever you get a good coach, then they swipe him away and they take him someplace else.
He got really successful a little later in life.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, I think he'll probably be there next year. I don't know if he has a desire to go. Where does he go? Does he go to another bigger college program and
Has he ever
turn it
done
around.
pro?
No.
Okay.
So he worked for Saban at Alabama, which was a
Yeah,
big
big
program,
deal.
right?
Mhm.
So would he ever go back to Alabama? I don't know. That could be something that's a possibility. I don't really know, but he's been unreal. I mean, this guy, he turned that program around. Now, the college football does have to adjust because right now it's the Wild West. You can transfer 4 different times in 4 years. You pay all these players. They've got to bring in a little more structure, meaning you may be able to transfer a couple of times versus 4 different, you know what I mean?
Right.
Every year, every team changes out wholesale because of the portal and all this stuff. So there's some crazy stuff, but Cignetti, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he makes one more jump, but I don't know that.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we love Mendoza, so congratulations out to
Unfortunately, he's going to get drafted by the Raiders, and then we'll see how that
no
goes.
Cowboy love for him. Huh?
I would love him on the Cowboys, but
well,
no.
why don't you make a call?
I'll make a call. I don't think it'll help. The
give Jerry
Cowboys
a
will have to
call.
move up about 11 spots in the draft to be able to do that.
All right. Well, thanks for spending some time with us this week. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. It really does help our algorithm and more than you even know. And if you want to get a copy of our email that we send out twice a week, you can sign up for those on nodoubtaboutitpodcast.com. And you can also make a donation to keep our show brewing and going, or you can buy some of our swag there. Thanks so much, you guys. God bless. And we will see you back here on Sunday.
You've been listening to the No Doubt About It podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at No Doubt About It Podcast.
No doubt about it.
The No Doubt About It podcast is a Choose Adventure Media production. See you next time on No Doubt About It.
There is no doubt about it.